remember last week the ANC and Cyril Ramaphosa reporting back after NEC meeting saying that they would actually be looking at broadening what we call a government of national unity. They said that they're likely to invite Action SA and even the Cape Coloured Congress into the fold of what is this current broad coalition. But also what's been happening within the GNU is the calls, even from inside the House, for Gayton McKenzie to step aside. There have been calls from the opposition parties, the EFF demanding Gayton McKenzie be removed as minister immediately, but even parties within the GNU and some of his cabinet colleagues called for the resignation or even the firing of Gayton McKenzie as the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture following the resurfacing of old posts on the website formerly known as Twitter, in which he repeatedly used racial slurs and appeared to be speaking disparagingly about black South Africans. In fact, here's John Steenhuisen, the Minister of Agriculture and DA leader, speaking yesterday.
Epithets, and I think that there needs to be consistency. We've had a number of instances in our party where individuals have said things that we felt were not correct, and we've taken action against them. They've been removed from public office, and we have dealt with them. And I think there needs to be consistency. It cannot be all right for one person to say something just because they have a certain skin color, but it's not right for another person to say something.
Gayton McKenzie is the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, but is being completely absent, many would argue, from the last two words in that portfolio, arts and culture. At this National Arts Festival, this year's National Arts Festival in Makanda, the premier arts festival in South Africa, it was absolutely absent. He decided to attend rugby games when South Africa played Italy in a two-match series. There are lots of reasons that we can criticize Gayton McKenzie, the racist and offensive language, his xenophobia, and his populism, the opportunistic outrage that he shows, particularly when it falls part of the coloured discourse. But what about his job as the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture? There's a very important KPI when it comes to his position in arts, sports and culture. It includes nation building, it includes reconciliation, and it includes social cohesion. Yet some would argue his actions undermine all three. One person who thinks it does is Dr. Ismail Mahomed, Director for the Centre for Creative Arts at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, penning an open letter to Gayton McKenzie to say, step aside. Good morning, Ismail. Really appreciate your time. When Gayton McKenzie was appointed, I do remember speaking to you, and you gave him quite a lot of grace, saying, let us see what he has done and what he will do, particularly for arts and culture in South Africa. A year on, how has Gayton McKenzie done, particularly in that often unoverlooked but very important aspects of his portfolio?
Good morning, Lester, to you and to your listeners. I think any comparison must be made in relationship to past ministers of sport, arts and culture that we've had. Now, we know that Lulu Tsingwana was an absolute disaster. We know that Natim Tetwa got the national title of Mampara. We know that Paul Mashatile was just hopeless in his job, and we saw what happened to Paulo Jordaan. So amongst a basket of rotten eggs, it seems that once again, sports, arts and culture has been dumped with a man who has divided our nation incredibly. And, one can do a great deal of good in terms of arts and culture, but one has to measure that in terms of what have you done in terms of national cohesion. The divide that we've seen, or we're seeing at the present moment, is probably one of the biggest mistakes that he's made in his career. And I think if he was going to win any kind of support as a result of some of the good moves that he made early last year when he was appointed as a minister those are going to be erased by what is currently happening.
Is this then a problem of Gayton McKenzie and his opportunistic photo opportunities when South African teams win, or is it simply an endemic problem that a government simply ignores the arts and culture part of that very broad ministerial position?
I think it's a combination. I think for me, the more important question is, yes, we understand that our broad constitution allows people of divergent views and sometimes contentious views to be able to stand for election, and it allows voters to vote as per their conscience and as they wish to do. And that, when Gayton McKenzie was appointed as minister, my view is that he was voted by a substantial number of people. He made minister as a result of the decision by the ANC to move into a government of national unity. And of course, I think it was a case of Cyril Ramaphosa wanting to bring as many people into a church simply so that the ANC could hold into power. And I think we've seen the mistakes of that, not just with Gayton McKenzie, but with the several failures of the government of national unity. But particularly with Gayton McKenzie, I think it's a case of emotional quotient. We saw that, when he was announced as Minister of Sport and Arts and Culture, it just shot off on one side with spinning, that is going to bring spinning as a sport. Almost 18 months after that, it's him that's now spinning in controversy. We've seen him talk about VAR, and it's once again a failure. But there are
we can talk about his son, who now owns a PSL football team.
Absolutely. But what I want to say is that when he got in, there are some things that he did really well. And he could have had the potential of becoming South Africa's best sports, arts and culture minister when you compare the rotten apples that we've had in the past. I mean, for example, when he just got in, he made himself completely accessible to the arts sector, unlike Nathi Mthethwa, who blocked himself behind bars and did not allow even a 60-day sit-in to have access to him. He responded immediately to the crisis at the National School for the Arts. He intervened and engaged with people at the Johannesburg Art Gallery. And I can continue naming a number of things where we saw, here's something good coming up. For example, he did not move ahead with that disastrous plan that Nathi Mthethwa wanted to introduce about amalgamating all the cultural institutions and art centers. But just as he was about to get into doing things really well, specifically for the arts sector, and I think the arts sector was acknowledging him for those positive changes, he just let loose because he's so much about himself. And we see this in his response to the Open Chats podcast. He should have simply said, this is wrong. We need to deal with this. I'm taking you to the Human Rights Commission and leave it there, step aside. But what he wanted to do is to utilize that to stir and ferment more tensions. He wanted to come out as a credible leader, leading a colored people into a kind of new revolution, and that was failure, absolute failure.
To continue a sports analogy, don't play the man, play the ball, but in his campaigning as Patriotic Alliance leader, he has often used either a coloured nationalism or even a South African nationalism when he goes on stage and screams Abahambe, when he has, during his electoral campaign, said that if he was president, he'd turn off the life support of a foreign migrant who was in a South African public hospital. Talk to me about what a Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture should be when it comes to nation building, reconciliation and social cohesion.
As I said in the post that I put up yesterday, that is one of the major KPIs, to be able to build a nation through art and culture, because art and culture has the incredible position to allow us to be able to reflect on our past, to be able to engage critically with our present time, but to be able to engage in new possibilities. The arts makes us all laugh together. It makes us all cry together. we are not a nation that's laughing together. We're not a nation that's crying together. We're a nation that's incredibly beginning to pull out thorns out of each other's eyes and hurting each other. And I think he needs to simply take accountability that he's really made a massive mess this time round. And he needs to simply say, I am sorry. I think that would go a long way. It doesn't mean that if he says, I am sorry, everyone's going to accept it, because we've learned in this country not to take apologies of politicians very, very easily. But he needs to demonstrate that by action. He needs to go into his office. He needs to look at his budget. He needs to implement that.
Really appreciate your time, Dr. Ismail Mahomed. Really appreciate you talking to us. Ismail is the director for the Centre for Creative Arts at the University of KZN.